to this very important event. I am really pleased because there are very few areas in Kenya you can get an organization planning for people just to converse in regards to policy. And from where I sit, I think policy is much more important than many other things we talk about as politicians, because they end up having ramifications, and they end up having effects, and they end up shaping the livelihoods of the Kenyan people and also their welfare. Even the name, Institute of Public Finance, summarizes some of the questions that we had before, especially the intersection between leadership and politics, and also the economy. Because the finance on the IPF is more on public finance, or public money, which is the economy. And I am glad to be in both, on the leadership side, but also on the economic front. In the politics side, it's easy, because you say things subjectively. You don't need to think too much. Anything can pass. You can say anything. It is subjective. It can be directed to somebody. You don't need any empirical evidence for whatever you say. On the economic front, you can easily embarrass yourself if you go off the facts, because some of the things we deal with are factual. Many things that are can be numerated, things that can be put in figures. Unfortunately, whatever verbosity you put around it, whatever speech you may put around it, 2 + 2 always is 4. Whatever you describe for us, it will end up as 4. So I'm very glad that we are discussing that. And the fact that it shapes the other. Politics shapes the economy, but on the other side also, the economy shapes politics. The more advanced a country becomes, the more aware the people become, and the more uwajibikaji in terms of the politics that is enhanced. And therefore, there is a very thin line, if there is at all. We are in a situation which is very good in terms of global economy. And I've been studying economists over time, and I can confidently say that the global economy now is in summer. Is in summer because there is nothing much in terms of the downside that is ongoing in the global economy. And therefore, it presents a very good opportunity for every singular economy of the world to take advantage of the summer to do what they need to do. Why do I say so? Currently, in terms of stability, other than the wars that the economists have already factored in, the economies of the world has already factored in what is ongoing in the Middle East. The economies of the world have already factored in what is happening around somewhere near Europe. We've already factored in that as economies. And fortunately, even in terms of supply chains and in terms of planning, that is already there, and it has been for years. So we have some stability in regards to the global geopolitics. When you look at the economy globally also, we are now in a sphere and in a path of decimated reading rates in terms of lowering of reading rates across almost all the economies of the world. There is quantitative easing across. The Federal Reserve will be meeting, I think, next week, if not this week. Actually, this week, the Federal Reserve of the US. And whatever that meeting will come up with affects my grandmother's place in the village, affects many things that we do in our economy. The beauty is that there is great expectation that we are likely continue with quantitative easing, will likely continue with expansionary policies in the monetary side in terms of lowering of the lending rates, starting from the Fed rate, CBR rate, and of course, supposed also to go to the private sector, supposed to. So the economies of the world we are buoyant. I mean, we have all the ingredients of an economy to grow. All of them are on the table. When you have rates going down, rates go down because private sector wants to be incentivized. And all those are happening now. In Kenya, we have CBR rates going down. Across almost all the economies in Africa and all the other economies of the world, we have that happening. Expansionary policies are now, and especially on the monetary side. The question we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans is, we enjoy the summer in the economic sphere of the world. How is Kenya taking advantage of that? And just use the data. One, we have had CBR rate coming down. Every other meeting, if not sustaining the previous rate, we are climbing down. But who is benefiting from the lowering of the lending rates in Kenya? And when I talk about economics, I like referring to the government data, because the beauty is that we still have some institutions that give credible data, and especially the CBK and the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. Now, we have a situation where Kenya is having expansionary monetary policy and lowering of lending rates. But who is benefiting? Because you have on one side lowering of rates, the same government data then shows that the private sector lending is actually going down, not growing. So in Kenya, monetary easing is purely a debt management tool. Purely. That the only parameter that is being eyed in terms of monetary easing and lowering of rates is basically paying less interest in the domestic debt, and therefore what is supposed to happen is not happening, because always rates should go down as a way of incentivizing private sector. But you have rates going down, but in the same breath and from the same source, then we have a report again on the other side showing that the lending to private sector in Kenya is actually shrinking. And therefore, that is a very huge cause of alarm, because we must harness whatever is happening globally, because it doesn't last for too long. Second thing that we have to be aware of, so that we take advantage of what we have now. Economies are always cyclical. Right now, President Trump is almost forcing the Fed that they have to cut the rates. And they will almost, I'm sure they will succumb this week. Now, after that, how is the economy supposed to now behave after that? We have low rates. We will definitely, again, in the next few months, start having a discussion about managing inflation, because those go hand in hand together. And the reason why I'm saying that is because we need to harness what we have now as an advantage globally, make a way of making our private sector buoyant and grow, so that in a rainy day, we'll have institutions that will support our economy. But when it is sunshine, we still cannot give warmth to the business sector or the private sector, because the government is crowding out the private sector from banking, from lending. In our economic, I mean, the easiest chapters of economics, we were told one of the roles of government and a central bank is to release money to the people through many tools, including fiscal policy in terms of spending. So we grew up knowing that the work of central bank, in quotes, is to print money, in quotes because it's figurative, and figure out how this money will end up in my pocket through many ways: spending, through financial instruments, and the rest. In Kenya, that has reversed. The work of the central bank now and government is actually to mop up money from the private pocket and then give to the government. That is why you see every month we are having fundraisings from government in terms of raising money. And what has that brought now, up to now? Out of those things that I'm talking about, our national debt now has grown to 12 trillion Kenya shillings. Over. It's now, because we borrow every day on average, maybe we are now talking about 12.4 trillion Kenya shillings, a higher figure from the previous times that we talked about debt. And I talked about these figures the other day, which are factual again. And every Kenyan, the beauty about Kenya now is that we may have shortfalls, but at least the constitution guarantees that we get part of the public information for free when you need it. So the current debt is over 12 trillion shillings. So in a year, we are borrowing 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings. And by the way, last year, government went against the law and overborrowed more than it had been budgeted. Because we had budgeted as a country to borrow around 1 trillion Kenya shillings. The government, by the close of the last financial year, actually borrowed more and borrowed 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings. What that means is that we are borrowing around 100 billion every single month. And every single day, including today, Monday. By tomorrow morning, the country will have borrowed 3.4, 3.5 billion every single day. And therefore, every hour we are talking about around 140 million shillings every hour. So we've been here for 2 hours. So we borrowed that much. And many times I think we need to sober up as a country, because if we don't sober up, the economy will force us to sober up. And when the economy forces us to sober up, it will not be very easy, like giving a speech as I'm doing today. The ramifications will be dire. Maybe what we need to do is to take some of the people from the National Treasury for a benchmarking trip to Ghana, and they interact with real people, not the economy. Many times we talk about jargons, GDP and the rest. You now go and interact with a pensioner in Ghana. Interact with a person who had bought government instruments in Ghana, who, after they borrowed too much, they had to call borrowers in a round table and tell them, guys, listen, I know I owe you 1,000,000 shillings, but from today I am the sovereign. I owe you only 700. That's what he called a haircut.